Hi, in this video I'll be talking to you a little bit about the thesis statement for the paper, the roadmap that's going to guide your readers throughout, and then also the topic sentences and how you can use those to continue that momentum of guiding readers through the paper. Because remember, you're not writing this just to write it, you're writing it within a rhetorical situation, there's a purpose, presumably an audience. You have to kind of navigate all the different variables in order to get the point across. So if you'd like to see this whole paper in total, you can click on the link in the modules and read it, and that will really give you a sense for how all these pieces come together. But this video will just talk about the thesis and the topic sentences. So let's start by looking at the title again, non-therapeutic antibiotic use in agriculture. So that's just a title. It tells you what the topic will be, what the paper will be about in general, but then the thesis begins to articulate the author's position, that unique perspective they're bringing to the conversation that's a little bit different than other people's. Not completely unique. We're not waiting to say one perfect thing that's never been said in the world. If we were going to do that with writing, think about that in life with speaking. You would never be able to speak anything or say anything if you only said completely original ideas. Your job as a writer is to bring together as many variables as possible to kind of get people to see what's going on. So let's think about how a paper comes together and what this thesis actually does. I like that roadmap imagery for a thesis because that is what it does. It guides your readers through the paper. It tells them what to expect. It sets an expectation. So after you read the thesis for a paper, you should kind of have a pretty good idea of where it's going to go. So let's look at this thesis statement here. The practice of using non-therapeutic levels of antibiotics to promote animal growth must stop. So we have a clear claim there. The person has a statement people can disagree with. And then they have some reasons right after that. Because eating meat grown under these conditions is not only dangerous to our health, but supports unethical factory farms. Two different points there. So we have something they have to establish. We have to establish this idea of non-therapeutic levels of antibiotics. Why does it have to stop? They're going to have to go into the meat and how it might be dangerous to our health, and also have to go into these unethical factory farms. That's the expectation that's set. If they do two of those but not all three, it's going to seem incomplete. If they do all three, then it's going to kind of work. So let's think about this checklist for a thesis statement. Is there a clear claim that people can disagree with? This is important. The practice of using non-therapeutic levels of antibiotics to promote animal growth must stop. That must stop part is the key. Some people would say, no, it doesn't have to stop. Things are perfectly fine. I like my chicken to be nice and robust and big. As you're looking at your thesis statement, ask yourself about your claim. Is it equally as argumentative, I would say, because that's what we're doing. We're contributing. We're trying to advance an argument forward to one degree or another. Next, do you have specific reasons for that position you're taking? Here, this person has two. Eating meat is not good for our health and supports unethical factory farms. For a paper this length, two is probably going to be enough because usually in the claim there's something you're going to have to develop also. If you have 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, you have to equally develop those things. So what I would always say is don't try to have more main points. Try to go deeper into the specific reasons or main points that you have because there are always possibilities. And as I help you revise, I'm probably going to ask you to go deeper into the issues as opposed to adding more in. And then no vague words in there. You'll see there are no pros and cons. There are no things, positives, negatives, consequences, issues. But if you look at these are the specific articulations of kind of those principles. Dangerous to our health. Somebody might call that a con or a negative or a consequence. But they wouldn't say dangerous to our health, so we wouldn't know exactly what they were talking about. As far as the roadmap goes and the expectations set, these vague words don't do it in the way that specifics do. Supports unethical factory farms. Again, that could be a con, or a negative, or a consequence, or an issue. But it's clearly articulated here, so there's no doubt about where this person stands on the issue. So that's what we're thinking about. We're thinking about a thesis statement that does all three of these things. You already have that. We've talked about thesis statements. I've workshopped them with you. If you've been taking those comments into mind, your thesis statement should be okay. Then the next part of it is, how do we continue to guide our readers through this paper after we have that thesis statement set? And that's where the topic sentences come in. So let's look at this image up top. Introduction, body, conclusion, kind of the three pieces. And on the right-hand side, it says paragraphs. The only problem I have with this image is that each one of the topics or reasons or main points is a paragraph to them. That's not the case for us. I want you to think about them as sections of the paper. So you might have, this is dangerous to our health, or antibiotics are dangerous to our health. That might be one of your points. It doesn't make it one paragraph. It could be 2 paragraphs, 3 paragraphs, 10 pages. It could be 20 pages. The scope of the paper dictates how big that section will be, but it's almost always going to be more than one paragraph because you can't really develop an idea fully in one paragraph. So the other thing I like about this image is that it shows there are distinct places to develop the ideas. I want to have a specific place in my paper where I'm talking about why these levels of antibiotics are a problem. I'm going to have a second part of my paper, another whole different section, where I'm talking about the health factors. And another part of the paper where I'm going into ethical or unethical behaviors of factory farms. Distinctly different parts of the paper. If I have that with my thesis statement, I'm not going to repeat myself. I'm going to know where I'm going. I can focus. If I get off track in this section, I can think, okay, I'm talking about non-therapeutic uses of antibiotics. Get back on track. This section, I'm talking about conditions and dangerous to our health. Get back on track. This section, unethical factory farms. Stay on track. All these pieces work together, and if I'm doing the right things, I'll be guiding my readers through the paper. So I gave you this example from this student paper, but it doesn't mean it's a perfect paper. I just want you to think about how it goes through. So we go through this thesis, and we go through, and I've tried to highlight topic sentences to match the parts of the thesis. So part of the thesis, non-therapeutic levels of antibiotics promote animal growth have to stop. Topic sentence, related to that, non-therapeutic levels of antibiotics are ubiquitous in the United States farming industry due to a lack of regulations. So the thesis gives you the overarching idea of where it's going. The topic sentence tells you specifically what's going to happen in that section. So in this section, you would expect to see this ubiquitous use of antibiotics and connecting it back to regulations. If they don't do one of those two things, it's incomplete. So again, a topic sentence, just like the thesis, keeps you focused. If you can clearly figure out what you want to get in that section, that's all you need. So with topic sentences, you might end up writing your section after you wrote your topic sentence, and it's completely different than what you actually plan to write. You have two choices. You can rewrite the section or change the topic sentence. As long as that section is still in line with your thesis, just rewrite your topic sentence. It's pretty easy. Progressing through the paper a little bit more. They've gone a little bit out of order here. You'll see the yellow in the thesis is last, but here they want to get to unethical factory farms quicker and maximizing profits. But there you'll know this section is going to be about unethical factory farms. They prepared you for this in the thesis. Now they're following through in the paper. We go down a little bit further. They're going to get into this dangerous to our health, especially these antibiotic-resistant bacteria in humans. So you'll see that progression goes through. Thesis statement. The practice of using non-therapeutic levels of antibiotics to promote animal growth must stop because eating meat grown under these conditions is not only dangerous to our health, but it supports unethical factory farms. Topic sentence. Non-therapeutic levels of antibiotics are ubiquitous in the United States farming industry due to a lack of regulation. Next topic sentence. The animal agricultural business, like many other businesses, is always looking for ways to cut corners in order to maximize profits, the unethical part. And then we get down a little bit further. We have that last main point. Unfortunately, there's not plentiful funding for independent long-term research studies associated with associating use of antibiotics to animals to antibiotic-resistant bacteria in humans, which gets back to that dangerous for our health. So that's the key. The key is that you have a clear idea of where you're going. When I took English 101, I had an instructor who used to say, if you don't control the paper controls you. The ideas we're working with in this video are meant to kind of get you thinking about that. If you have a clear idea for your thesis, if you have distinctly different points of the paper where you're establishing them, and clear topic sentences to guide your readers through, the paper's not going to control you. You're going to be controlling the paper, and the paper will ultimately be better. Does it mean people will agree with you at the end? We don't have control over that. The best we can do is develop the ideas and guide our readers through and try to follow through an expectation we set in the thesis and the introduction.